Beautiful. It's late. I've had a really long day, a spectacular, inspiring, beautiful day here at APAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee Policy Conference. I mean, heard from so many great speakers today. Was privileged to go to the Craig and Rebecca Simon family dinner here at APAC, which I attended last year. And I mean, was so moved to meet people who were at this dinner last year, hosted by Rebecca Simon and her father, Craig Simon, where I told my story, the accidental Talmudist story. And then to hear today that two of those people set out on the Daf Yomi journey because they heard my story. I was really, really moved by that. I was Alina Levy and, oh my gosh, what was the fellow's name? Michael Binning, I believe, Michael Binning. So thank you so much, my dear friends, for going on this journey, for learning Talmud, and for telling me that you were inspired. It was emotional for me. So it was a long and beautiful and inspiring day, but it's 12:30 at night. And I wasn't able to get to learn my daf so that I could share it with you, my friends, until so late. But here we are. We're on page 59. That is where we are holding. And it's just fantastic what I've got for you, right? So that's Daf Nun Tes. And we're very near the end of Berachos. Berachos has 63 pages. It ends on page 63. We're on page 59. Recall that we're in chapter 9, and we're back after a beautiful digression on dreams and dream interpretations that lasted 3 pages. Now we're back to blessings for specific situations. And it's so important to remember this philosophical underpinning for our sages, right? That just anything that happens in the world, unusual or not so unusual, but just reasons to check in with God, reasons to check in with our spiritual higher self, right? And almost anything is a good reason to make a blessing. You're not going to make a blessing in vain, but they're looking for situations, and particularly anomalous situations, to remind us, as I've been saying, that God made the world, God sent us into the world, right? In fact, somewhere else our sages teach that when we were in the world of souls, we made an agreement. God came to us and we made an agreement, right? Us as a soul, agreed with God that we would go into the world, that we would have a mission, that we would do our best, and then we would return, right? And we go into the world, and it's tough because we agreed to take on a mission, and yet then we're born as humans and we forget our mission. And we spend our whole lives as humans trying to remember what our mission is, right? And when we check in with God, when we make a blessing, when we interpret a dream, when we think about what's going on in the world, when we ask ourselves this question, what is my mission? Why was I sent here? To ask that question is to get closer to a mission, right? And that mission is going to be some form of the best that I can do for others, the best way in which I can be of service. Because when you ask that question, you're just naturally your heart will pull you to some sort of an answer that has to do, with what are my unique abilities, what is my unique situation, how can I do the most good? All right, that sense of having that relationship and of asking this question and to somehow orient ourselves to do the most good, not only when we examine our dreams, but when we examine our own lives. But today, on today's daf, our sages bring this attitude, this very beautiful attitude, to much bigger questions. So we have a story that Rav Katina, is it going to be Kasina? Just spelled out in this book in the Koran Talmud as Katina. So Rav Katina is walking past the home of a necromancer. Right? So what's a necromancer? A necromancer is some kind of an idolater, right? I mean, he's looking into magic. He's speaking with the dead. He's not a Jew, and he's not living as a Jew, and he doesn't have the same world picture, right? That a Jew, and particularly a sage of Israel, would have. So as he's walking past the home of the necromancer, an earthquake happens. Probably Rev Katina, shakes. It's scary, and then he observes, because there's no coincidences, no accidents, right? So he observes to himself that I've just experienced an earthquake, and it happened just as I was passing the home of this necromancer, right? Somebody who's all in on the occult and magic and speaking to the dead and whatever the practices were of that necromancer. So because the earthquake happened at just that moment, Rav Katina thinks to himself, and he says it out loud to himself, does this necromancer know what is causing this earthquake? And the necromancer, who maybe is near his window, says, Katina, of course I know. Of course I know why there's an earthquake. He says the earthquake is happening because the Holy One, blessed be He, mourns for the travails that his children are undergoing. His children meaning the Jewish people, right? So this is not a Jew, but he's saying to a sage of Israel, right, this earthquake is happening because the Holy One feels the pain that the Jews are experiencing at this time already. We've lost the Second Temple. We're in the exile. We're suffering at the hands of our enemies, Roman persecution, etc. And he says, and the Holy One cries for the pain that his children are experiencing. And when he cries, 2 tears fall, one from each of the eyes of the Holy One. And when those 2 tears land in the great ocean, they cause such a huge reverberation throughout the world that we experience it as an earthquake. Rav Katina denies this. He says, no, that's ridiculous. You don't understand anything. If there were 2 tears, then we would have 2 earthquakes, and we only had 1 earthquake. And really, Katina was scrambling to sort of cover up the fact that the necromancer was correct. What does it mean that he was correct? Does God have 2 eyes that drop tears that cause earthquakes? No, and in fact, we're going to have a few other explanations like this. And before I explain the underlying philosophy of all of them, the Gemara will fill in that Rav Katina says, no. Actually, what causes earthquakes is that the Holy One claps his hands in anger. Why is he angry? Because of the way the Jews are being mistreated, or perhaps because of the way the Jews have behaved. That the Jews let him down, that we misbehaved, and so forced on ourselves the destruction of the temple, forced God to reprimand us, right? God didn't want to reprimand us, but we forced his hand by behaving so badly, and in his anger, he claps his hands in anger, and that causes an earthquake. Or Rabbi Natan says that God sighs. We talked yesterday about how we're told that a human, should avoid sighing at all costs, because giving ourselves over to misery to the point where we feel it physically can be so harmful and sort of get in the way of our learning. Now Rabbi Natan says that God sighs over the dire straits of Israel. Right? Those are two explanations about actions of God that lead to earthquakes with reasons connected to the actions of Israel. A third explanation, the rabbis say that an earthquake is caused when God kicks the firmament. Right? So the firmament is how they understood the vault of the universe, where the stars are located, or the sky, you could call it. And when God is above the sky, right? So when God kicks the sky, that causes an earthquake down here. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says that an earthquake is when God forces his feet beneath the throne of glory. Now, it's 5 explanations that are given here. 1 from the necromancer, God cries. 4 from the rabbis, God claps his hands. God sighs. God kicks the firmament, or God forces his feet beneath the throne. Now, it's very important that we understand that these now are not meant to be taken literally. Even within the world, of the Talmud and sort of the understanding of the world that they had, and believe me, in many matters, even on this same page, we have that our sages are able to measure, the length of the year so exactly. They knew, that a leap year, like we had, would produce a leap. The solar year would produce a leap day every 4 years. Not only did they know that, but they knew that the seasons would begin at the same hour of the day every 28 years. So even without telescopes, and there was a discussion of the stars and how the stars align, without telescopes, they had an incredibly precise notion of the movement of the stars in the heavens. So yes, of course, there's many scientific matters, scientific theories and measurements that they did not have access to 2,000 years ago. But it wasn't from a lack of sophistication that they're offering these highly anthropomorphized explanations of what causes an earthquake, right? They're meant to be understood metaphorically. They're saying that we don't know. We don't know the mechanism that causes the earthquake, but that emotionally it is related, right, to God and God's relationship with the Jewish people. Now, this is the kind of statement, right, that could cause anti-Semites. And today I had the great honor and delight of meeting Elon Carr, the United States Special Envoy appointed by the Secretary of State, to do his best on behalf of the United States of America to combat anti-Semitism. Why does the United States need a special envoy to combat Jew hatred in America? Because in America, like every other country that's ever been since Jews were on this world, there are Jew haters. Right? So, this is the kind of statement that might lead Jew haters to say, look at these people. They think that's such a special relationship with God, that because something goes right or wrong for the Jewish people, natural phenomena would ensue, even earthquakes, perhaps terribly damaging earthquakes that could kill people in some remote region of the world. And these Jews are going to say that because, they're having it bad, God sent an earthquake into the world, and who knows what that damage did to people who have no relationship or bearing at all on the relationship, between the Jews and the God that they pray to. A Jew hater could say that. But if we go deeper, what does it mean when we say as a people that God has an emotional relationship with us? Now, we'll get that from the Torah. God tells us in the Torah that, for example, when we make certain sacrifices, it produces a pleasing aroma. We have the ability to please God. And we're told in many places in the Bible that we can anger God. Now, why would an infinite being have emotion related to us? I mean, which is nothing. We're such a speck, compared to infinity and an infinite being who created the universe. Why would he care what people think or do? And yet he does. Right? He's told us that he has an emotional relationship with us, perhaps akin, somewhat related to in some way, the kind of emotion that a parent feels related to the actions of a child. Now, when we look at our own relationship with our Creator as an emotional relationship that gives the Creator both pleasure and pain, we don't do that because we're arrogant. We don't do that to say to the rest of the world, hey, we're so special that we can make God happy or unhappy. We do that to create responsibility and accountability for ourselves, right? If we have the power to make God happy or angry, what a great responsibility that produces to conduct ourselves properly. And so, in a sense, looking at earthquakes and saying that they're caused by God having an emotional reaction to what's going on in the world is very similar to interpreting a dream. And we already learned about a dream that the dream follows the mouth, meaning the dream follows the interpretation, meaning that according to the interpretation of the dream that we make, we will then conduct ourselves in one way or another. We will be inspired to conduct ourselves in a more upright and righteous manner. It's not self-righteous to say that God has an emotional relationship with us. It is, let's call it aspirationally righteous, right? Because we can look at the world and say, hey, you know what? We're a people that is important. Other peoples are important too, and they have their relationship with God, and they work out what the parameters and the meaning of that relationship is. We only understand ourselves, to the extent that we're going to give these interpretations. But in giving these interpretations, in interpreting the meaning of earthquakes, the way that we might interpret the meaning of a dream, when we ask the question, what does the earthquake mean? To ask that question is to challenge ourselves to come up with an answer that will challenge us to be the people, right, that could make our Creator proud. That's the point of these kinds of interpretations, right? They cause us to rise let's not rise. They cause us to arouse ourselves toward better behavior, to being more of a mensch, right? More of a human and what a human can be. I believe that is what's really going on when we say that we have a special relationship with the Creator, and that every phenomenon that happens in this world, is a lesson to the Jewish people, right? That doesn't mean that it only happened in order to teach the Jewish people something. It doesn't mean that, God forbid, some natural calamity happened on the other side of the earth and many people were killed in order to teach us something. But it happened, and we must take a lesson from that behavior. And as soon as we ask, what is the lesson that we're supposed to take from that phenomenon, the answer that's going to follow is some form of, we can do better. Whenever we ask that question, what is the lesson? The answer that follows is some form of, and we can do better, and we can be inspired, and we can do more good in the world, and we can go and help those people, or we can help somebody locally, or we can prepare ourselves and our neighbors, or we can discover technology. I mean, look at what's going, to be here at APAC and to hear about the innovation and technology and leadership that Israel is taking in solving the coronavirus, in solving water shortages, in desalinating ocean water so that people can drink it, in bringing water to drought-ridden lands. I mean, just over and over and over again, this idea of having stewardship over the earth as a form of responsibility is something that we can look all the way back to our sages to discover the inception of that attitude. At any rate, the question then, of course, is, what is the bracha? What is the blessing that we say when we experience an earthquake? That's why this is here in this section of the Talmud. And the blessing, as we learned, days and days ago at the outset of this section, for an earthquake, for thunder, for lightning, for strong wind, we actually have a choice. There's two blessings that are possible. One is, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, whose strength and power fill the world, right? Why would we say such a blessing? Because we're in relationship with the Creator and something extraordinary has just happened. Or we can say, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, author of the world, right? And we could say either one for those four big phenomena, but the tendency is that people will say for thunder, whose strength and power fill the world, and for lightning, the author of the world, right? Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, author of the world for lightning, and blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, whose strength and power fill the world for thunder. and for great, great winds, and for earthquake, whose strength and power fill the world. One last note from this page, Rabbi Alexandri, right? So that's a real Greek name. Alexandri from Alexander. It's also my middle name, Alexander. Said that Rabbi Yehoshua Bar Levi said that one who sees a rainbow should fall on his face. Why? So he's learning that out from Ezekiel. And Ezekiel said at chapter 1, verse 28, as the appearance of the bow, or the bow, like the rainbow, as the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud in the day of rain, so was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face. Now, see how, Ezekiel abstracts and abstracts and abstracts. What he saw was an utterly mystical vision that can't really be captured in language, right? Either you've had some kind of a divine vision or divine perception, or you haven't. If you've seen such a thing, you might have some imagining of what Ezekiel saw. And if you've never seen such a thing, you can't really imagine it. But he's suggesting that it was like a thing which is like a thing which is like. And what he saw when he saw at the appearance of the Lord is somehow related to what a rainbow is. Perhaps it's that fluidity of color, like looking into a spectrum or a kaleidoscope, something that keeps shifting. At any rate, when we see a rainbow, perhaps it's 1/60th, as we've been talking about, a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. Perhaps a rainbow is 1/60th or 1/600th or 1/6 millionth, I can't say, of a divine manifestation when Ezekiel had his prophecy. But somehow the rainbow looks a little bit like what one sees when one has a vision of the Lord, right? And because it's suggestive of that experience, right, Rabbi Alexandri said in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi that you're having a semi-prophetic moment when you see a rainbow, so you should fall on your face. But the rabbis in the West, so meaning these were the rabbis in Babylonia, and referring to the rabbis in the West, which would be in Israel, at this period dominated by Rome, the rabbis in the West would curse somebody who falls on his face, who literally bows down onto his face when he sees a rainbow, because of an appearance of impropriety, meaning that if people went around and when they saw a rainbow and they were saying, well, this is somehow suggestive of what God looks like, and because I love and fear God, I'm going to just bow down, an onlooker who didn't understand what those people were doing might think that the one bowing is bowing to the rainbow, as if the rainbow is some kind of idolatrous being in itself. And so, lest people make that mistake, we put a fence around the Torah and don't let people bow so that others won't think they're bowing to the rainbow. Either way, we do have a teaching, and this is given elsewhere in the Talmud, here it's just alluded to, that when we see a rainbow, we're going to make a bracha, we're going to say a blessing over seeing the rainbow, but we're not going to stare at it. You don't stare at a rainbow. You don't gaze at a rainbow. You look at it, you appreciate it, but it's considered like immodest and it's a little too much, almost like it's not for us, It's sort of daring God to give us, you're looking into something that's not for you. It's like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Remember the Mickey Mouse cartoon based on a piece of classical music, where the Mickey Mouse is the assistant of a sorcerer, and he wants to, roll up his sleeves when the sorcerer is away and make magic himself, but he gets in over his head and ends up causing huge problems. And he's supposed to fetch buckets of water, but he enchants a broom into fetching the buckets of water for him, and it gets all out of control, right? It was too much for him. Staring too long at a rainbow is like it's too much wanting to have a mystical experience when it's not given to you. So we respect that a rainbow carries some hint of God's wonder. We appreciate it, we say the blessing, and then we look away. The way that we would, it's almost like you don't want to look at something it's a little too provocative, right? What is the blessing that we say when we see a rainbow? We say, according to Rav Papa, because there's a few different formulas, but we follow Rav Papa in this, and we say, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who remembers the covenant, is faithful to the covenant, and fulfills his word." Why do we say that? Because the rainbow is a reminder of the covenant, right? That God made with Noah and really with the human race. That God destroyed the human race in the flood, and then after the flood, when he repopulated the world, starting with Noah's family, he said, "I will never again destroy the world by bringing a flood on it." God might destroy the world some other way, but he won't bring a flood again. And apparently God, it seems like he won't destroy the world no matter how bad we got, because we've gotten pretty bad in a lot of different ways. But this idea that God loves us, and no matter how much we mess it up, right, he's going to show he might punish us, but he won't destroy us. And so when we see the rainbow, it's both a sign of, it should remind us to be in awe of God and to feel his love, right? Like a parent, he might chastise us, but he loves us. And so he remembers his covenant because he said he would. He fulfills his covenant because he said he would. And he fulfills his word, because the one thing you can count on God is to tell the truth and to act the truth. And whatever happens in this world that comes from God, it's truth. That is what I wanted to share with you this evening, my dear friends. I don't know if there were any questions in the comments. I'll look quickly. No sound. Did the sound come? I hope the sound came. If you're on Facebook and there was no sound, I apologize. But the same class is on YouTube at Accidental Talmudist. And I do hope the sound is good. I hear that it's okay on the YouTube one. Can somebody on Facebook tell me, are you getting the sound? Edberg says yes. Okay, good. So you got the sound on Facebook. All right, my dear friends, sending you big love from the nation's capital. And hopefully I will be able to share tomorrow's class not quite so late in the day tomorrow. Though it's going to be a big day. I think the Vice President is going to be addressing us. There's going to be a lot of Secret Service and special security for the big assembly here at APEC tomorrow. And lots of other meetings as well. But that's what it is. Sending you big love. All the best.